This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 12. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime over there is...
Turbo Penguin.
Hey, happy pre-Friday to you. And we missed last Tuesday's episode because I wasn't feeling too well. But we got some fun stuff for you today. Let's kick it off with some driver updates.
Nothing is new in Drivertopia except the ARC driver that came out yesterday. So all four of you go out and get your new ARC drivers.
I think that's going to be a meme until they actually start moving serious units, because I am entertained by that as much as I hope that they have good success with ARC.
Or until ARC is canceled.
Or it's canceled. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's a good thing with Intel these days.
Kicking it off, we're going to start with AMD on the GPU side. They have announced that FSR 4 is slated to use AI-based upscaling. Now, with FSR 3 and Frame Gen, we're seeing some amazing results. So what are we going to do with AI? How are we going to use it?
I think the only thing that's really big here is to understand that with the increase in RT performance, that it only makes sense that they're going to enhance what they're doing with Frame Gen and make it quicker and less laggy and more responsive and more successful. So my guess is that we're going to see FSR 4 be really kind of heavy on the next gen, the 8000, probably some working in the 7000s. My guess is that it's going to require at minimum a 6000, but I don't think it's kind of like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
I think 6000 RT is kind of on the slow side. I think the loaded question will be will there be an uptick on some of the older CPUs? And, there really is a difference between like a 67 and a 6900. Will FSR 4 really work? And I'm going to guess there's going to be a floor for what CPUs are supported here. But I mean, I think it's just natural for them to say, look, we're going to get a huge ray tracing performance bump. Now you can utilize those, if you're, for AI upscaling, if you're not doing ray tracing, or in some of them, you might be able to do both, a little bit of mix and match.
Yeah. And well, with, like you were saying, the 6900 that I have is not particularly great at doing any sort of AI processing or anything like that. Funnily enough, the 3080M in my laptop blows its doors off for doing stable diffusion. So, they may have some tricks under their sleeve to kind of hit some back-end performance gains, but seeing FSR move forward is a good thing because it also helps the PS5 Pro, which, kind of goes to show they listed as the same feature two different ways in their stuff.
Okay, so real quick, we talk about PS5 Pro.
Yeah.
So the question I have is that you have PSSR, which is like their upscaling AI thing.
It's FSR.
That's the question. Is it just FSR, or is Sony doing something else there? And then, my follow-up question to that is if Sony is doing something else, my guess is that between the two of them, AMD knows what they're doing. Is there some sort of, sharing of what are we doing, what works? Mm-hmm. Because there is some learning that's going on here. And, anyone who doesn't think that this is a good move for AMD to continue to do consoles. I mean, this is selling units, it's designing units, and it's working with a large partner.
Yep.
FSR 4, is that going to be an update to PSSR, or is PSSR, hey, this is working, and by the way, FSR 4 is coming, and it's a hybrid conglomerate. It'll be interesting to see what that is, and if there's really a difference, because I'll have to admit, I've watched and read more on console gaming the last week than I have in probably a vast majority of time. But apparently PlayStation 5 had a PSSR update because everyone was complaining that PSSR looked like garbage. And this last
Yeah.
update actually made it better. So I think there's going to be some, you know, some learning of what they kind of got wrong. But now that you've got a better AI and better RT, you know, how are developers going to utilize that? If I'm a developer and I'm not using ray tracing at all in my games,
Yep.
is there a piece of that RT that I can use to enhance PSSR? And I'm going to guess
Yeah.
the answer to that is yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not using RT, that's going to give you some extra headroom. Plus, kind of to your point, there is a lot of co-development going on between AMD and PlayStation because AMD won the PS6 contract.
Yep.
They beat out Broadcom, they beat out Intel, and a whole bunch of other people. And at the end of the day, that's only good news for us on all fronts, from GPU to CPU to getting ports of these games over to the PC.
I don't think there was much of a conversation or an argument there. I mean, you've got your longtime partner killing it with the PS5 Pro. You're happy with that. Broadcom doesn't have. I mean, they have the x86 license, so I mean that's nice, but they don't have that expertise. And you're concerned that Intel will sell you a bunch of voltage parts that that nuke themselves.
Right. With the
So
economy
the
cores,
warranty concern with that, the economy cores.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think there was really a competition. I don't think anyone really was like, hey, I wonder if Intel could do that. No, Intel can't. You guys failed miserably before, and now nobody wants your stuff. So
NVIDIA really, I think, is the only possible competition on the graphics side, and it doesn't make sense because they just want an SoC.
Mm-hmm. No, they just didn't even bid.
Well,
so switching over to Intel,
since we mentioned economy cores, Cobra Core and Royal Core specs have leaked, and they're getting rid of the economy cores. So no more little Geo Metro next to your big honking dually 2500 Dodge Cummins. And I think this is a good thing because one of the things that they're doing here is looking at somewhere in the 2026 timeframe coming out potentially with CPUs that just have the performance cores on them, but they have an interesting hyperthreading model where they're looking at doing 4 threads per core.
I think the loaded question is what there's a lot of different things that Intel can do. They've got a lot of different ways that they can make processors.
Yep.
They need to make processors that people want. And they need to make processors that don't kill themselves and don't have warranty problems. The honest truth is the number one thing that Intel needs to do right now is they have to have a successful launch that sells a bunch of units.
Yep.
End of story. They can't get shown up. They have to have a positive launch because right now everything is so negative. Intel Arc is negative. CPUs are negative. Mm-hmm. They have to get something positive. So if these, whatever comes in 25 and 26, they need to string along a number of successful wins to win people over to basically say, yeah, we know what we're doing. I still think there's damage that's been done, and I really wish that Intel maybe was smarter when it comes to PR. But how do we not screw over our clients? Because I feel like that's all they've been doing really well is screwing people over.
Yeah.
So the only way to do that is to release stuff that people want. And I question, they've got in my opinion, you got to have 3 solid generations before, I'm interested in being a guinea pig again.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. I mean, as much as I love to see Intel, leaking these things that are hopeful for the future, it's still hope. We've got to see them execute.
Real question. Do you think these are planned leaks?
I have often suspected that because the thing is they're hurting so bad they need even the slightest bit of good news. And I will tell you absolutely that the potential of having variable hyper-threading levels on a 4 or 8 honkin' core CPU that if you do a single threaded thing, it shuts off hyperthreading on one of the cores and just blasts it through. Give me that all day long, man. If you only need 4 cores for a game, shut off hyperthreading and give all of the performance to that game. Because,
now, Moose, what happens if
mean,
you have? What if your big core that's doing one thing needs more voltage? You're just going to give it to him.
Just give it.
You want some
Give
more?
her.
Just give it.
You
Give it all the beam.
You got a bigger
all the
cold.
volt.
All the beams. Yeah.
all of the
Yeah.
voltage.
I
I mean,
that's the thing is like one of the things that this does is it also kind of negates the need for the ring bus to a certain extent. The ring bus has been there for quite a while on Intel, pretty much since they included the GPU onto the die with the CPU. But if they can get the ring bus out of the equation for voltage, which this next generation, the 200 voltage and the 200 kilovolt parts are going to be using, that could solve a lot of the major issues of these parts burning themselves to death. Which again, that's good news.
I thought it was kilovolt for how much voltage they were going to need. And the other thing that drives me nuts, okay, from gamers' perspective, ring bus is there because of integrated graphics. Who wants integrated graphics?
I mean, to be honest, nobody. I do. Well, no, here's the thing. If I had integrated graphics on my 5800, what I could do is have my main monitor running through my big graphics card, and then the integrated graphics driving my side monitors, because I'm not using those for gaming. And that takes driving those monitors while you're playing does take some overhead on the GPU to render the desktop and render what your Discord window and stuff like that, or play a YouTube.
So you're losing video. A third of a frame. Yeah.
No, it's actually quite a bit more than that. With my 6900 XT, if I turn on my side monitors, or I should say, if I turn off my side monitors in Cyberpunk, I can gain about 10 or 15 frames. So it pushes me up over 100 frames per second. Same thing, like if I'm playing on my TV, I will shut off to my current main display and my far left display and just go with the one display. And I actually get comparable frame rates at 4K that I do at 1440p ultra wide. And which, there is some overhead there, and I would prefer to offload that. But, and also too, how often, of course, not super often, but there are situations where having that onboard graphics is handy because, all of a sudden my system's not posting. I think my GPU's dead. Let's plug it in onboard and see if it's the whole system or just the graphics card. 2-second test. And you get a post on your onboard graphics. So there is benefit. It's not as big as it is to most people, but it's there. So moving on, in 2025, looks like AMD is releasing the Kraken. So Kraken Core is coming along with an RDNA 3.5 APU and a Zen 5 CPU.
Okay, so I have a theory on this. Kraken is going to be the beginning of the death of discrete graphics.
Really?
I believe so. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I mean, you look at things like the Z1 and you look at these handhelds and you're realizing you're going to get a lot of performance in a very low voltage, very low power unit. Now, I don't think it's going to remove them for all of them, but I mean, I do believe these APUs are going to, right now, if I looked at onboard graphics and I compared it to discrete graphics, it is miles apart.
Right.
Not even Not even close. Like if you're trying to play game intensive applications or even AI stuff,
Yeah.
right? It's just it's not there.
I mean, you can get away with
But
1080p medium on some of the higher end stuff right now, but still, that's
you
1080p
look
medium.
if you start looking at what these are going to do, it's only going to be a matter of time before AMD realizes, hey, I could just put a Zen 5 and an RDNA 4 and make a really big APU that's like 400 millimeters squared, that's giant, that shares CAN bus, DDR6, 7 style RAM. And oh, by the way, you just have one cooler and you have one 24 pin and maybe an 8 pin for auxiliary power. And oh, by the way, it's going to beat the snot of because you don't need to have this. And oh, by the way, it's the size of a hockey puck.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
that would fit into a minis forum pretty easily. And it would,
there,
I think, based on what you're saying, it would cover about 80% of the market, which is exactly where AMD's targeting with the 8800.
where do you think? I mean, Steam Deck 2.0, the handheld version of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The console news that we're hearing is not positive for Xbox. They're getting rid of people. So if Xbox isn't there, I could absolutely see somebody like Steam, who has been more hardware centric,
Mm-hmm.
getting into that place. Something like that would be very attractive to them. Um, and the ability to really control and get into the TV space, which is something Steam has tried in the past. But I think part of it means is, you're going to be able to get some really good performance off of some of these, and it's going to be a game changer because you're sitting there and say, yeah, I can get a Steam Deck or a Steam desktop or whatever the heck they call it,
Mm-hmm.
and I can play 4K
Yeah.
and I can play all my Steam games. And oh, by the way, Steam games, Steam. So I get Xbox games, I can get Steam games, I can get indie games, and I'll get the PlayStation games. Um, so I really think that this is a movement, because if you look at a Zen 5 and an RDNA 3.5, that's going to be a properly quick. If you were to get that in a minis forum sized puck,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's going to be properly quick and very versatile.
I mean, the cooler for that's going to be bigger than the rest of the machine. It's going to be mostly cooler.
Well, but hold up. These are the Zen 5 that they're talking about is laptop parts.
Yeah.
And RDNA 3.5 is the same one that's in the PlayStation 5.
Right.
So it's not going to be a 500 watt, GPU and a 200 watt CPU.
Right.
But it's going to be plugged in, so you don't have to worry about battery constraints. I mean, I think the real question is if you took out the battery constraints of the Steam Deck, how fast could you get the Steam Deck to go? And
Right.
I would
No,
bet you
exactly.
could with Intel knows really well how much faster things go when you add voltage.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so
One of
if you take the battery piece out of this, I mean, all of these mobile ultras, the ROG Ally, the Z2 Extreme, whatever, all of these different things, all of these have huge capabilities. If you're running something in 35 watts, you're
Mhm.
running at 35 watts because the battery limit, and Asus doesn't want to sell you a portable gaming little tablet or handheld and say, great, you get an hour and 32 minutes. No,
No.
they bring the power down so they can get you 3, 4, 5 hours
Right.
before a charge. But when you don't have that power limit constraint, you really sit there and say, I could make my 17-watt part go 35. I could make it go 45. How much voltage until I turn into Intel and start frying stuff?
Right. Well,
I mean, that's a
and
real question.
yeah, so think what I'm thinking we might start seeing is a dock like the Nintendo Switch offers. And what it would potentially include, because part of the issue with setting these parts at 35 watts is heat. Because if they get too hot, you'll wind up with a situation like the ROG Ally had, where it was nuking the SD cards. So since heat is still an issue even at 35 watts, if they put in a 65 watt part and run it at 35 watts for the battery, then you get home, you drop it in the dock. That dock might have some sort of, maybe integrated water
Well,
cooler
I
in it
mean,
that helps defray that.
laptops are doing this already. I mean,
Yeah.
if it's really simple, launch a game in battery mode, um, without it plugged in, look at your frames in game, and then plug in your power connector and watch your frames like almost
Go through
triple.
the roof. Yeah. Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and they're doing the same thing. Is that they don't want you to, the notion is that they don't want you to sit there and be like, yeah, I'm playing games for 22 minutes before my battery's dead.
Right. Yeah,
And that,
cuz
that's the trade-off, right?
yeah.
And so, um, as these APUs get stronger and stronger, there's eventually going to be somebody somewhere that says, "Hey, what if we?" And they're going to come up with this brilliant idea of, putting RDNA 5 and a 3.5 ADU in a puck and putting this a Steam tag on it, and Steam's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, we can sell those."
Yep.
I mean, it's just the. I mean, look, we know that Steam. Okay, a few things. We know a Steam Deck 2 is coming.
Yep.
Okay,
We
there's
know a Switch 2 is
anyone who
coming too.
we know a Switch 2 is coming. In fact, we know the Switch 2 should have been coming last year almost, but Switch 2 could have been way earlier, but it hasn't. We know Steam Deck 2 is coming. We just don't know what and how much more powerful it is. We know they're working on it. Um, Knowing what they know, and understanding where things are at with Xbox having some issues and Sony just releasing a half gen little, you know, half upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're gonna have people who have the ability to say, "Yeah, I want to play in front of the TV," and they just want it to plug in and work.
Yep.
And if Steam can do that, the player base and the data that's going to come out of those Steam machines, let's say Steam Machine 2.0, is going to be amazing.
You know, I'm
And
I'm kind of
it
thinking.
is a straight up attack on discrete graphics,
Yep.
and it's a straight up attack on Windows.
Well, not just Windows, but also Xbox, because if you look at Xbox, like you said earlier, they're not doing so hot. Even though they're using pretty much the same architecture as the PS5, uh, they're struggling. They're struggling to sell units. They're struggling to meet the market demand or actually find any market demand.
I'd
And
love to see why they didn't release the Xbox Ultimate or whatever they were going to call it. They had it. It was taped out. It was
eh,
designed. Um,
I
and
think
someone decided, no thanks.
Well, yeah, I think what's going on there is just trying to think of the most potentially positive direction. Is they saw this PS5 Pro, they saw what PlayStation was doing with that, and they're like, you know what? Let's just go to the next gen. Let's just get ready to fight the PS6, because we know the PS5 Pro is literally a stopgap for the PS6, and it's kind of the turning up the heat on the frog to make it more palatable to sell an $800 console. And if Microsoft can skip that intermediate step, even though they've already done much of the development, a lot of that stuff is going to end up carrying forward to the next generation part. So, you know, I think it makes sense, because I really don't see these like Ultimate and Pro consoles really moving a whole lot. There's going to be enthusiast people, just like there's people out there who want to buy a 4090 for gaming. There's people who are dumb enough to drop $1,600 on a 6900 XT. Um, present company included. um, it's there are people that are going to buy it, but it's not going to be the enthusiast line. And again, to kind of go back to what you were saying about AMD's going after killing discrete graphics, I don't think they're looking at killing it entirely, because discrete graphics does offer them some performance benefits and performance potential. Plus, there's also the commercial aspect where the gamer cards provide a development platform that they can use for their commercial platform. Because NVIDIA uses RTX for their Quadro line, AMD uses the RX series for, or it's not even the RX anymore. It's just the 8800 XT. They use that line for their Fire Pro cards. And so, I don't think it's going to go away completely, but it's going to more than likely be relegated to people who just want shinier graphics and faster frame rates than what something on the chip can provide.
You're right. I agree with what you're saying. I think the loading piece is, as the gap between APUs and GPUs when it comes to gaming performance, as that gets narrower and narrower, it's going to be easier for budget and entry level gamers to not buy a discrete graphics card
I would say
because
even mid
they'll be able
level.
to get. Exactly. I
Yeah.
really think so. And if could you see a gamer edition Ryzen or whatever they're going to call it in the day,
Ooh.
where it's a 16 core Ryzen with an 8800 XT, and oh, by the way, scalable system memory because everything uses the same
Mm.
memory, and it's GDDR, because the system can use it now for both of them and it's shared. Let's just call it GDDR7X.
Yep.
Make it super fast and make it stupid quick. And oh yeah, remember the days when we had, 8 GB of RAM on an NVIDIA card?
Yeah.
I got 60 right now.
Yeah. Hey, I just threw 64 gigs in my system.
Exactly.
Let's load
It's
some big fat textures. Well, and to that point too, what if AMD brought back Crossfire so that those of us who are in that higher tier drop in a, X800 XT or a 900 XT, we can still take
dual
advantage of the
core,
performance.
dual socket, baby. Let's bring
Yeah.
dual socket back to the gaming side.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
Uh, there's lots of different ways you could do this. I think the loaded question is that there's lots of really unique ways. I think the loaded question, what comes to market, and I think
Yeah.
that's where we're going to be exciting because I do believe, for the longest time with PC gaming, we've seen, you know, it's faster, 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 more efficient, faster, 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 more efficient. And graphics cards have kind of done this. And then, like, even though the efficiency upgrades, it's still faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of getting ready for the next, power bump. And part of, I think, what we're going to see is we're going to start seeing them saying, I can make that smaller. So
Yeah.
I think the efficiency is going to be, instead of speed, 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 efficiency, speed, 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 efficiency. I think it's going to be speed, efficiency, 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 speed, and then it's going to go the exact opposite way because I think there's going to be a shift in the market of people who want smaller, less power, more
Same
compact,
performance. Yeah.
more flexible. Because I think if you sat there and said, hey, in 2 years, if I could give you a APU that does 4K gaming like a 4080 with 64 gigs of system memory and VRAM, even though if it's 2 years in advance,
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of gamers who be like, yes, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
4080 and the size of a puck. And oh, by the way, it uses 50 watts. It uses less than my toaster oven.
Yeah. No, exactly. And on that, sticking on that note of multiple CPUs and the fun stuff in between them, we have a new AGESA update coming out that addresses the intercore latency on the 9000 series. Looks like they're dropping the latency from 180 nanoseconds down to 75. That's more than double.
This is why they should have released it. It was too early.
Yeah.
They weren't ready. They know they weren't ready. I sure hope some heads or some people get some serious issues, because it's really interesting. I saw an article that Zen 5 is selling as bad as Bulldozer did.
Oh.
And what
it's
they're seeing
too.
is they're seeing an uptick in sales, and in Zen 4.
Yeah.
Zen 4 parts are more expensive now. The bundle for the 7800X 3D went up by $50 at Micro Center.
Wow.
Now, I do think it's going to go back down. It was at $499, and now it is $550. That tells you what they're going to do. Now, they need the 9800X X3D.
Yeah.
They need that, like they need, a CPU, like Intel needs non-exploding CPUs or voltage CPUs.
Right.
They need it as fast as they can. But I also think that in AMD, if you're listening, just make sure it's ready on day one for launch.
Yeah.
Please. Yes, because I really think the next couple of releases for AMD are super important, because people say, oh, yeah, the slides say 20%. Yeah, okay, I'll believe when I see it. That is the real concern that AMD has right now. Yeah. I'll believe it when I see it. That's AMD, you've got to get this stuff sorted off. When you say it's 32%, you got to make sure it hits 32% from reviewers and it's overwhelmingly glowing.
Yep.
None of this, 21% in this. Stop. Put the qualifiers in.
Yeah. Be honest.
Plus or, AMD, Intel does it all the time. The next generation is going to be 18% faster, plus or minus 10%.
Right.
Holy crap.
My internet's up to 1 terabit per second. I get dial-up.
Plus or minus, 80%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
For the ballpark. I mean, by the way, that plus or minus 80%. Yeah, so great. Okay. I think it's good. I think it's smart.
Yeah.
I just wish that AMD would have realized that this was a problem before they released the stupid thing.
Yeah.
And it would have saved them so much hard. There was no need for them. They could have sat on that part for 6 months and Intel still wouldn't have gotten even close.
Yep. No, exactly. And that, I think, is kind of the most disappointing thing about this launch, because I think with the exception of the 5000 series parts, AMD has not had a trouble-free launch with any of the Zen stuff. I mean, Zen 1 was memory issues left and right. Hey, I got 4 slots on this board. Why doesn't my system post when I have 4 sticks in it? Zen 2 was problematic with certain memory timings. Eventually, they sorted it out. But, we really need AMD to fix some things with their marketing and with the way they launch parts, because they're not launching bad stuff, with the exception of the BIOSes for the 7000X 3D parts that were literally exploding. But unlike Intel, they handled it right.
I think the best thing would be for AMD to make sure that the 8800 XT, when it comes out, is A, ready, and B, stupid price aggressive.
Yeah.
And be like, you're going to get this for $449. Get it at a price point where it's like, even, use the plus or minus 10%, or just give us real things and say, here's a machine running, AMD, and here's a machine running a 4080. Which one can you tell?
Yeah.
One of these is a 4080. One of these is this. Here's the frames. Who can tell? Who can notice the difference? Nobody. You're going to spend $1,200 on the 4080. You're going to spend $449 on the Radeon.
Yep.
And we're going to be comparable performance on ray tracing and rasterization.
Yep.
They just got to do it right. And I think the smart thing from them would be like, you know what? We're not going to make as much money, but we're going to sell a crap ton of these, and we're going to over deliver, and we're going to make it so it's really positive experience for both reviews and for end users.
Yeah.
And say, you know what? We're going to redeem ourselves with this launch.
I have never once heard a customer complain about under promising and over delivering.
Yep.
And, if AMD can just finally learn from their mistakes once, I think we could probably have a good launch of a generation. But
I just think it needs to be a good positive launch. That's it.
yeah,
I mean, just one.
yeah,
I don't think it's so bad, but I really do believe that they really have to think about this and plan this and find out where they've failed and say, okay, how do we not do any of this stuff again? How do we make this so this is such a good thing that there's nothing negative that can be said?
yep,
And how do we wipe the floor with NVIDIA when it comes to performance and value?
yeah,
You
and
know,
Intel. Well, I mean, they're already wiping the floor with Intel, so
well, Intel's wiping their own floor because their ARC's
true,
going to get canceled.
true, yeah,
I kid you
exactly.
not. With everything that's bad that's happening at Intel, I really sort of if you told me, hey, in 12 weeks they're going to cancel ARC, I would be like, yep, okay, cool,
Yeah,
yep.
not big surprise.
One last thing, it did not make it into our conversation.
Bonus story.
Bonus story. Okay, so Steam Deck's on sale. You can
Ooh,
buy a Steam Deck LCD for $296 for the
that's a
64
really
gig.
good price.
Really good price. Did you know there is a certified refurbished Steam Deck store?
I did.
There is a certified refurbished Steam Deck store. It's not much cheaper. $279 for the 64 for the refurbed. Okay. It's totally not worth it. By the way, it's out of stock.
Of
But
course.
as they have some of these that are coming back and they can refurbish these, they are. So if you are a gamer looking for a deal, look to the Steam Deck store and look for the certified refurbished, because when they get these back in stock, those will be a good deal. You know, as they start coming out and trying to clear out some of their stock, I could easily see a 250 Steam Deck, and I would be very interested to try Steam Deck at $250.
Yeah, that is honestly really tempting because I mean, if you're going to a LAN party, you're going to be on a plane for a while. Why not just flop out your Steam Deck and hop into a game? Or,
So I will say,
yeah,
I will say, I'm getting ready for PDX, and me and Minion, this one right there, even though he can't see me.
the one that's totally hiding from us now.
Yes, you'll see him peeking through his little holes in his chair.
Oh, wait, he's
But
peeking. He's peeking.
is he peeking? No, he's not. He's
No,
not.
he's not.
He's
I
ignoring me.
was joking.
But we were looking at that to make sure we had two machines, and it's easier to fly with smaller things.
Yep.
And I did look long and hard at the Steam Deck, and ended up going with a Phoenix laptop because I got such a good deal on it. But the next generations of Steam Decks, I think, will eventually get to the point where you can just plug it into a 1080p monitor and play at a LAN party and have great frames. If you could get me 1080p with 1080p 60
Mm-hmm.
on the vast majority of current titles, sign me up. So,
I mean that I'm looking at what the Steam Deck has as far as hardware, and it's theoretically possible. You'd
right
have to
now
turn
it's
the
about
quality down a
720.
bit.
It's
Yeah.
it's 720.
Well, they're
If you could
1280 by
get
800, so it's kind of in between. But yeah, it is one of those things where it has some decent power to it, and if you're playing the right games for it, you could hook it up to a monitor and use a mouse and keyboard. Um,
yeah, you absolutely can.
So yeah, I mean and I mean 296. That's for a 64 gig. That makes all kinds of sense because you can just swap out the SSD if you don't like the size or you need more space. and they're pretty competent with Cyberpunk, which is, I mean, that's not a small, undemanding game. So, even at their native resolution, that I think is some good news for people looking into the handheld market.
Handheld market's going to get a lot more competitive.
Oh yeah.
I think that might be the big topic of conversation in 25 is going to be handhelds. And I think more machines like these mini forms, because I think beauty is if you could get the Steam machine software and Linux and running that on a minis forum with a couple of Xbox 360 controllers, which is very doable.
Yep.
That is going to be like they have the new minis forum that is the Strix Halo that they came out and said, yes, we're doing it. And that looks great. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool to see kind of the smaller sector kind of get some more traction. The mobile gets some more traction. I think we're bound to get to the point where like, we're going to be like, holy crap, you can do this on a handheld.
Right.
But I think that's not far down the road.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. So on that hopeful note.
Bombshell.
Yes.
Bombshell.
Well, we can't do that.
Yeah, we can. No, they quit. They quit.
Oh, that's true.
They're no longer a thing.
So to harken back to the good old days, on that bombshell, we're going to call it a night for this show. And thank you all for watching. Please remember to like and comment, subscribe, do all the things down in the doobly-doo down there. If you've got any ideas for stories coming up, please feel free to leave a comment. And, let us know what you think about the show and have fun. So until next time, thank you all for watching and have fun storming the castle.
Oh.
Good night, everybody.